So y'all, today's conversation is surrounded by marriage. And we posed the question today, why should anyone get married? So I really kind of want to talk about why should anyone get married from both male and female perspective. What do you guys think?
I feel like it's an interesting topic of discussion. When I was younger, like I don't know. I don't think that it was ever that I didn't want to get married, but I was never that girl who like sat there and visualized herself in a wedding dress and walking down the aisle and like I thought about, okay, yeah, maybe I grow up and I get married, but it never clicked with me at the time. And then when I did, get into my adult years, I don't know, like the idea of marriage just didn't seem like super appeasing to me. I thought more about having like commitment ceremonies and, just more personal things, because in my mind, I'm like, why do you need a piece of paper to prove that you're in it for the long haul or to prove that you're dedicated to each other? Of course, there's a lot of like legal stuff, government stuff where, being married can be important. But then, I did ask myself the question a lot, like, other than that, what's the point? Like other than the whole joining of material things and possessions and accounts and things like that, what's the point of getting married? And to me, it didn't make sense. I think I have like a different outlook on it a little bit now. And it's weird because I don't even know fully what changed other than the idea of committing to somebody seems more sacred, I guess.
It sounds like your values have changed. Yeah. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think, divorce rate is very high these days. A lot of people, they get married for what feels like all the right reasons, but then things happen and they just grow apart. But my idea of marriage is, if I am going to marry you, we're in it through thick or thin, you know what I mean? Like, we're there, we're choosing, we're making an actual choice to support each other and to be there despite the fact that life does happen and sometimes we go through things, we go through struggles personally. But I think the point of having a partner, a life partner, is to have somebody who is like backing you through life, you know what I mean? And who is there for you. And so I feel like the only way now in which I would be married is if I truly 100% believed the person that I was committing to was somebody that I've already kind of been through some of those trials with and have seen how they've responded when I've been in a space, how they respond when they're in a space, how they respond when I try to help them, or how they respond when we go on and take a trip and there's a lot of pressure going on. Like, if I can see somebody in all these elements and I know for a fact that no matter what, like I believe for a fact that no matter what, like we're going to make our way through. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be a piece of cake. And sometimes you may not like the person that you love. You know what I mean?
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Like, I think for me, if I can find that type of a connection, then I'm down to be married. To me, then it becomes sacred because that is a relationship that you share with one person that you are literally choosing, like, you are going to be my life partner. So I don't know. That's just my experience with it. I don't think that people should get married just for the sake of getting married. I don't think that people should get married because they feel pressured to get married. And I
Right, I agree.
that people should get married if they are not prepared to consider all the potential obstacles that can come along your path and understand that no matter what those obstacles are, they are going to be there. You know what I mean? They're going to do their damnedest at very least to show up and be present and make it work. But if you can do all those things, then yeah, I think marriage is for the people who are willing to do the work for it.
Absolutely. I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I got a lot to say about this. I want to start off with my childhood and because I, from a very young age, had always wanted to be married. Like I always wanted to be married. And I actually think my mom and my dad, but more so my mom than anything, had a huge influence on that desire. And I don't think that it was necessarily a bad thing. So, my mom and my dad, they were married for 13 years before my dad passed of cancer. I was 6 years old. So a lot of what I've learned about my dad is through my mom and her experience. And she spoke so highly of him, and how he was there for her as teenagers and how they married at very, very young ages. My mom got married when she was 15, right before she turned 16. She got married, and my dad, he was 18. And they had my older brother. And then I came about 7, almost 8 years later. And then unfortunately he passed. But my mom told me such a beautiful love story. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that my dad loved me. There's no doubt in my mind that I was conceived in love. She romanticized it. And so as a young girl, I wanted that. Like, that's how men are, because that's how I knew my dad to be from my mom. She's not a man, so she couldn't give me the male perspective. And I think it was a really beautiful thing. But I married young. And as somebody who's been married for almost 13 years, that ideal didn't prepare me for the real deal. It did not prepare me. I can honestly say that you were right in terms of you will not like your spouse. I think I speak for the both of us when I say that has occurred. And so my point is that marriage is a very beautiful thing, but marriage is very, very sacred. And so while I don't think everyone should get married, and I don't think that marriage is for everyone, and I don't think that marriage should be for everyone, I do think anyone who truly values commitment, who values fidelity, who values authenticity, and who values honesty and being trustworthy, those people should get married. Those people who want a lifelong partnership, those people who want monogamy. Now, some people choose not to have monogamy within their marriage, whatever. My point is that if you value the principles that a marriage should be built on, then yeah, you absolutely should get married. But I think our society really needs to take into account that marriage is no longer a status symbol, and that it is not for everyone, and that is okay. And the more that we accept that, our divorce rates will probably decrease. People get to live in their truth and be free and be happier and not feel pressured to do something that they're not ready for because they were told and they somehow believe that they have to do this in order to reach some pinnacle of success. It's very beautiful and it's sacred, and we need to keep it that way by leaving it for people who value the principles that marriage should be built on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I agree with both of y'all.
It's interesting too, because I remember back when I was not really considering marriage and more so considering commitment ceremonies as an option for me to do marriage. I came across this biography, and I don't for the life of me remember what it was called, but it was basically talking about how in Iceland, about I don't know the exact statistic, but somewhere in the 90s, let's just say it's 95% of in Iceland do not get married, and actually live very happy, long lives together.
I believe it.
That it also begs the question, does the idea of marriage, or the essence of what marriage is considered to be, put additional stress, unnecessary stress on couples where it may not be needed? Like, and that's always like made me curious.
I would say 100% yes, absolutely. Because so many people feel pressure to get married. So many people believe that marriage is the ultimate commitment. You know what I mean? And everybody doesn't get married for the right reasons. You know what I mean? So you shouldn't be marrying somebody if you don't 100% trust that person.
Right.
Like, yeah, because it's that sacred. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think it was interesting too, because they were talking about how a lot of couples are totally okay with not getting married, because it allows this openness within the connection where you don't feel bound necessarily to somebody, like you have to stay, you have to make it work, you know what I mean? And weirdly, and maybe there's some sort of psychology behind that, right? It's that freedom of I can go or I can stay without being tethered necessarily to somebody works. It creates longer relationship.
I think it's because it removes that feeling of somebody doing something or staying out of obligation or feeling trapped in a sense, versus I choose you every day and I know that you choose me because here we are, versus, you know, I'm here for the kids, or I'm here just because we're married, and, you know, a divorce will be too expensive and I don't want, you know, all that other funny stuff. So I do feel like those added pressures that come with marriage, where people are like, you know, you can take half if you get a divorce, and, you know, all of these things that if you decide to divorce threatens your well-being, especially your financial well-being, which is an incentive for people to stay married, but it's based in fear.
It's not healthy at the end of the day.
At all. Yeah, I agree. So I can see that, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like I can be objective about that as somebody who's been married, who's experienced marriage, the ups and downs, all kinds of things. I do feel like that, you know, not everyone should be married, but that's not a bad thing, like, at all. You know what I mean? I don't mean that as a slight to anyone. I'm just saying that if you're not the marriage type, if you know you're not marriage material, it's okay.
Yeah. I'm kind of you, Ava. When I was a child, I really didn't think much of it. I kind of battled with knowing who I was and who I wasn't as a child. So it's like, that was like the least of my worries.
Yeah.
I grew up in a household where my grandparents were married, but I got to see their ups and downs. And when I would see their downs, it was kind of just like, I don't want to deal with this. This is not what life is supposed to be about. And, you know, the older I got, the more I was just like, I just want to be settled. You know, I want to be with somebody who wants to be with me. And we have this values and morals. Like, that's what I've always wanted once I got to the age to really understand, you know, how it's supposed to work. And there were people that I dated that I thought that it would go further than us just being in a relationship, but it didn't occur because I wasn't who I am now today, or who I was supposed to be. I honestly feel like when it comes to getting married, you really need to know who you are before you
Absolutely.
know somebody else. Um,
Mhm.
and I try to tell people that I'm connected to that kind of force things. It's not worth forcing it. Just let it flow. If it's
Absolutely.
not really big on titles, I feel like when a title is supposed to come, it's gonna come. Let's build this foundation. Let's see if we can be friends before we get to talking about you're my spouse, you're my lover. Like let's discuss the real stuff before we go
No,
into.
seriously though.
And looking back at it now, seeing my grandparents, they've been married over 50 years. So just seeing all of the obstacles that came through while I was a kid, and now as an adult, seeing that they made it through all of that, like you don't see marriages last like that, especially to some of the stuff that they went through. I wouldn't have lasted.
Listen, now that's a whole nother topic.
Look, right. I totally get you. I totally get you on it. I like, even growing up for me, I didn't have a chance to really see healthy relationships myself, you know. So I mean, I watched my mom go through a marriage with my stepdad, but that ended not great. You know what I mean? That was just very hard on both of them. And I don't know that that necessarily affected my view of marriage in general, but I knew that I didn't want that. Honestly, what it did affect was that this realization that I wanted to end the cycle of unhealthy relationships in my family line. And so and I feel this way today, whether I get married to someone or it does end up just being a commitment ceremony, it doesn't matter so much to me. But what does matter to me is that the person that I'm choosing to grow with and be a life partner with is somebody who is going to stimulate the best of me, and is somebody who is going to be an incredible role model and father to any future children, you know what I mean? And somebody who has something to add to our life together, you know, somebody who's gonna bring health and wellness and love and compassion and all those things that make for really strong, rooted, solid connections. That's what matters to me. I don't really care too much about, you know, whether I end up walking down an aisle or whether we just stand somewhere on a beach in front of somebody, you know, saying a few vows in front of friends and let that be that. It doesn't matter to me, you know. It's what I strive for is a healthy connection between myself and somebody else for as long
And that's the most important thing, to be honest with you, above all titles and all of that. Like the meat of it is your connection healthy? Is it working for you? You know,
Exactly.
and if that's what's happening for you, then all that other stuff is just extra.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, marriage, like you said, Brittany, marriage isn't for everybody. And I think that these days, a lot of people are choosing not to get married. And that's okay in some ways, because why put added pressure on a relationship if there doesn't need to be added pressure? However, I do feel like for the people who do choose the route of marriage, I think, like I was saying earlier, marriage is really only beneficial if you are willing to put in the hard mother effing work to get through marriage. You know what I mean? It's hard. I haven't experienced it yet, but I can tell you it's hard. I've seen my fair share of friends and loved ones go through marriage and their experiences, and sometimes they'll tell me things about what they're going through, and I was just like, dang, if these two people could just find the common grounds, if they could just move past how they're feeling and only how they're feeling, and both of them come to the table and talk it through, communicate, be respectful, be open, be honest, whatever, it could work. But
Yep.
a lot of people give up because they're just, and some people put in more effort than another person
Yeah.
to make the relationship work too. And that's a whole nother topic conversation, but it's
Right.
it's a lot.
It's
Yeah.
a lot.
That work is necessary, especially that inner work. That
Absolutely. Because the truth of the matter is, if you bring in baggage from your last 5 relationships,
Damn.
relationship that could be solid, it ain't gonna work. It don't matter how much chemistry you have with that person. If you're bringing in your baggage, that baggage seeps in and causes unnecessary turmoil, unnecessary stress, anxiety, all of those things, trust issues, whatever the heck you got going on that you're bringing in. Same for the other person. If they have not healed themselves from any of the past stuff and they start bringing that stuff in, like
It's doomed from the beginning, if you ask me, for the most part. I mean, it's a setup for failure. So Lonnie's right in terms of that inner work, because when you do that inner work, you'll be able to identify those red flags and recognize this may not be in alignment with me, or we may not share the same core values. We may have the same desires, but we may not be on similar paths in terms of how do we get there. And that can be a source of tension. So I really think the focus, shouldn't be on a title, but it should be creating healthy relationships, like having a new standard, a new norm for healthy relationships versus relationships that feel like a jail cell, prison. You know what I mean? And just being honest. The truth of the matter is, in this society these days, I think marriage should be a huge staple in our community, but in order for it to be shed in a positive light, again, I feel like, I don't want to say this in a mean way, but I feel like people that don't really want that, or it's just not a part of their journey, should be weeded out. You know what I mean? I feel like if we stop putting pressure on people to get married, then marriage as a cultural influence, I guess you can say, would appear more sacred. We would be able to see it better, because we don't have people entering marriages prematurely because they're having a baby, or entering marriages strictly for financial gain, or because they were arranged to marry somebody, or whatever, conjure up anything. The point is, it needs to be for the people who truly desire it and who truly value the principles that a marriage should be built on.
And I'm going to say this too, because I feel like it might be a little bit controversial, and that's okay. It's got to be a little bit controversial. Honey.
It's okay.
But I find more so heavily on the side of women, that women can sometimes pressure their men into marrying, like proposing, basically. And I think that's a horrible idea. If your man wants to marry you, he's gonna pop the question. But then you also got to ask yourself, does he actually want to get married? Did he even see marriage in his future like that? And if he did see marriage in his future, and it's taken 8 goddamn years for him to pop the question, that's an issue, honey, we need to address. Okay, I know that could be another topic for another time. But listen, I'm just saying, a lot of these women out here want to try to pressure this man. When are you gonna marry me? When are you gonna ask the question? If you've got to ask that, there's something off, some disconnect.
Ooh.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
And I think that kind of goes into as women, when we're in these situations where, you know, I guess you could say like you're getting a delayed response as it relates to marriage, you have to be strong enough to recognize when a relationship isn't serving you, you know, and instead of pressuring this man, being strong enough and loving yourself enough to make space for a person that's more in alignment with what you want can come along, instead of trying to force somebody, because you end up forcing a relationship, and then you end up having to carry that relationship for the duration of that relationship, and then you get burned out because you forced a situation. And so now you have to care. And as a woman, as women, we generally don't deserve that. We really don't. So, you know, if we remove that pressure that if you're not married, then you're not as valuable, you know what I mean? And just normalize being in whatever kind of relationship you want to be in, or not, or lack thereof, then women won't feel the need to pressure men to get into relationships that they're not ready, or marriages that they're not ready for. So
Yep. Being forced is liable to fail. So the more you gonna be for you.
Right. To me, it's just like, if you gotta convince, like, try to get, why? Like, why are we in this? The man, like, look. Men know what they want. They know what they want. Like, if they want to marry you, they will take the steps it takes to marry you. I don't feel like that should mean like it should be rushed. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that means they need to marry you within 2 years or any type of particular time frame, but I think that there needs to be more open conversations about what the other person wants. And if that person has never really seen marriage in their future, then you may need to consider whether they will ever see marriage in their future. You know what I mean? Maybe they don't want to get married.
Ooh, please don't wait too late to find that out. I mean, right. I feel like you know, I haven't been in the game in a long time, but that just seems to be something that you would want to discuss early on before you even enter into any kind of like exclusive or committed relationship. Like,
put that energy into that inner work, and you won't even have to worry about none of that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You gotta ask this question. You gotta ask, like, if I don't want to get married, then what do you want to enter into this if you know that you do want to get married? Like, you gotta have like these open, genuine, honest conversations, which you're the person that you're engaging with. More people need to be free. They just live in their freedom. A lot of people are shackled at the moment.
Like you said earlier, that communication that's key. That's key to any relationship. You got to be able to communicate, and that's what ended my last relationship. That communication started to slide, and I had to slide. Peace.
Right on by.
Like, we ain't got communication. This ain't gonna work. Cause what?
And we 800 miles away from each other. Like, wait, what do you mean?
No, sir. Yeah, big facts, y'all. Big facts. Gotta love marriage.
Mm-hmm.